Hi, Breathe University. It's Kamitha Whipple checking in with you for our 100-day challenge with ET. I am very pleased with the results that I am getting out of the 100-day challenge. I've been much more productive, especially when it comes to my grind, which, as you know, is grief ministry. So we're right in the middle of a series about grief exclusively for my Breathe University brothers and sisters. In the first video, we talked about a good definition of grief. The second video and the third video, we talked about what not to do and what not to say to a grieving person. But what if no one has died? In our definition of grief, we said that grief was the conflicting feelings that are brought about by any sort of major life change. So then technically, right, anything that throws you off your game could be considered grief. And yeah, almost anything that throws you off your game could be considered grief. The difference is, again, grief is when your identity changes as a result of this major life change, right? I'm no longer a single person. I am married. I'm no longer married, I am a widow, right? That's the major shift. That's the major change. And so if somebody that you know, that you love, is going through a major life change and they're having trouble adjusting, they're having lots of conflicting feelings, they may be going through grief. So what I want to give you is a couple of signs, some expressions of grief that you can observe in those that you love, and then knowing that they're in a grieving state, you can then provide them with a little bit of extra support. Does that make sense? So I want to just kind of run down a couple of things. So physical symptoms of grief include crying, heavy sighs, a lot of that, headaches, loss of appetite, difficulty sleeping. Sometimes you have disturbing dreams, weakness or fatigue, or just like body aches and pains that are unexplained, mind fog, and the inability to focus. That actually happens with me a lot. That has been happening with me over the last week or so, about 2 weeks now. I just have this mind fog, inability to focus, and I tend to break things. I'm losing things. I am misplacing things. Like I'm just dropping things on the floor. Like, why did I drop that for no reason? I'm not thinking clearly. I'm bumping into walls. Where'd that wall come from? So that sort of thing. The largest symptom that you may see as a friend of a grieving person is the decrease in self-care. So if your friend is usually the person that prays every day, does their morning meditation every day, someone that watches some inspirational videos every day, someone that showers all the time, someone who loves to put on cologne or perfume, do their hair, put on makeup, if they enjoy taking care of themselves on a regular basis, and then because of this life change are no longer taking care of themselves, that will be usually the first sign of a grief event, especially when it's something that's positive. Like if you're retiring, right? That's a positive life event. That's a change. But if that person goes outside with pajamas on all day and kind of doesn't do the same things that they used to do in taking care of themselves, that could be an indication that they need some extra support as far as grief is concerned. So not just physical, there are emotional indications as well. And certainly you know your own emotions, but for friends and family members, try to kind of think about some of the things that they've been talking about lately. So feelings of sadness, yearning, a sense of hopelessness. If someone speaks negatively about the future, feelings of worry or anxiety, frustration or anger that seems to come out of nowhere, or small triggers now are large triggers, or guilt. A lot of those emotions all play into the grieving period, the grieving process. And again, grief is all those conflicting emotions at one time. So you may observe mood swings in your loved one. And then, of course, there are social expressions of grief as well. If your loved one is detaching himself or herself from others, isolating, from social contact, if they're behaving in ways that are just not normal, if they're taking on somebody else's mannerisms, that's something to look for. And again, grief is a change in identity. So, or rather, grief is caused by a change in identity. So if someone says things like, well, I can't do that now that I'm what have you, or, well, now that I'm this, that's not going to work for me anymore. And they're experiencing some of these other symptoms that I talked about. They may be in a grief period, and that's okay. Grief is healthy. We're not trying to erase sadness from off the face of the planet. Grief just means that it's a temporary, healthy state where they need extra support from their friends and family and loved ones. They need a little more extra care given to them. So many times the person might just outright say, listen, I'm grieving over my marriage. I'm grieving over the loss of my job. But if they don't, those are some keys that some indicators that you might want to look for. Having said that, there's multiple levels of support for them. Number one, you are support. They need family, friends, community in order to support them. So go back to those other videos, the what not to do, what not to say videos, and think about different ways that you interact with them. Just like grieving a death, many times people in this new transition of life need camaraderie. They need to be around other people that are going through the same thing or have gone through similar things. So you may want to suggest that they go to a support group. The problem with support groups, though, is that sometimes, depending on who they're led by, the support group is not so much a way to help them move through their process. A support group just kind of allows them to continue to ruminate and wallow in that miserable story. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. There is a time to mourn, but then we need to move when it's time for them. They'll know it's time to move into recovery. There is joy. There is wisdom. There is freedom after loss. There is. Again, a lot of times when they get stuck there, people don't realize that death is temporary. It's designed to be temporary. And you're supposed to learn something. It's supposed to mean something that you went through this. And you are not a completely new person. You are a person that has this in their past. So yeah, one of the things that I did not say, and I neglected to say this on purpose, was reckless behavior. So if your friend is suddenly experiencing a desire to bungee jump or swim with sharks or drink excessively, use recreational drugs. Any sort of drug can be turned into a recreational drug, or sex. They may be trying to avoid pain. I have a video coming up for that soon. But before I go into that video, next time, I want to speak directly to those that are grieving, those that are the bereaved, and discuss the myths, just the things that we say, the cliches that we say that just aren't true, and the realities about the grieving process, in the hopes that it will help move you from grief to recovery. I love you. I love you. And I pray that the God who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above more than you could ever ask or think about, grant you something that you're not even realizing that you need right now.